Yeah, very well so, and good morning. The campaign had started, and it begins to get into a crescendo starting July of this year, and then the latter part of the year, you even struggle to get a meeting with some of them. If you want to meet them, you have to go to the village and the constituency grounds to have such, meetings. But I think there are two maybe fundamental premise that I also want to sort of start with. The first premise really being that, in my view, the government has squandered quite a lot of the goodwill that it had or has had. And number two, as Haruna was speaking, and this is a point I noted down earlier myself, that there were certain gaps in governance and certain gaps in the running of this country that a number of us and others had identified as far back as 2022. So that's something you recall. I was among the first on this same platform to actually call for operator's sack.
Right.
As far back July of 2022.
You called, you repeated, you got tired.
Right, I even got into a bit of trouble, for that. Subsequent to that, there have been other calls from the likes of Kojum Pieni. I recall also July, August, same time of 2022. I recall Acheampong himself earlier this year also spoke asking him to resign. And even the party itself, the parliamentary caucus, did same, although nothing, came out of that. So if you take these two premises and then you scrap another, for me it comes down to the point that I think it is too little, too late, rightfully as you capture in the title, and the graphic that you put out. I don't think that the timing helps the party particularly, and it wouldn't make much of a difference on the economic front and some of the social issues that we've been, discussing ad nauseum here over the last few months. Number one, I think that the ministers and many of them being MPs and of course having been elected, in some of them, their constituencies themselves, they are not even sure whether they will win in the main election. So a lot of them are there or would be there as ministers, but with also one eye towards trying to keep or retain their parliamentary seats. So in that sense, you have a bit of a divided attention in terms of putting your full effort and commitment to the work at hand.
So your view is that from this angle, the national interest will not be served?
I think if you look at the national interest in terms of where we are, so basically the economy, inflation, bringing cost of goods and services down, sustaining the currency, some of the reforms that we've been talking about. I mean, if we've not been able to do it in the last 7 years, what will 10 months do? One. Number two, if the people that you're putting in there are also going to be fighting another cause, which for many of them is even more existential to their survival as politicians, right? Then it's even going to take some attention away from that sort of, nationalist cause. I do concede that some of them already are ministers already, and so they're coming into the role with some sort of experience. But for many of them, they're going to take 3 to 6 months, as some is saying, to learn the ropes, right, of the job. Particularly for the finance ministry role, which is headed by my good friend Dr. Amin. I think the immediate priority for him has to be how we conclude the external debt restructuring, because that's the biggest bottleneck currently to whether or not we unlock more IMF funding and also get more fiscal space that we need. So there's about $13 billion worth of Eurobonds that we need to restructure. The official creditor committee of the on the bilateral debt side, needs to give more or less their blessing, right, to any deal that we agree with the commercial creditors. And originally, the government says, or had indicated that they are looking to conclude this external commercial debt restructuring by March of this year. And I think that really sets the time for Dr. Amin and his team to start working on this ASCP. It's going to be difficult, but it's not unsurmountable. And I related to that, I would again advocate that if it's probably not already started, he should start getting on the flight and heading towards, China and some of those other players to see what we can get.
You don't appreciate that Ken Ofori-Atta's new position is for that purpose, for continuity?
Well, he's been there for the last 7 years. Not much, in my view, has come out of that, particularly in the last few months. And I think related to that point, I actually had written it down. We need further clarity on what exactly Ken is going to be doing at the Finance Ministry. So they say he's going to be an advisor, and you quoted Franklin and others in terms of negotiating big deals, and he might be bigger than even Amin. I'm not too sure what exactly that would entail, but I think we need some specific clarity. What is he going to be doing different from what Amin and the folks at the Finance Ministry, again, would be doing? Because you might have some duplication of potential role in there. But as a substantive finance minister, I would think that, Amin and his team should be engaging the different creditor groups, especially, China, in the next few weeks, and hopefully we can conclude this by March or by April, of this year. Related to that point is also the fact that if you look at the budget itself, many of the items in the budget are already being implemented. So as finance minister, it's a bit difficult to actually see how much scope or room he can actually influence the decision-making process in the next few months. The only avenue for him to do something would be when it comes to the mid-year budget in June or July this year. But again, that may be too little, too late, right, in my view. So those are the issues for me and how, I look at that. The last point, maybe just to add, is also, of course, on the political side of things. If you look at a number of the people that have been appointed, it does indicate to me that many of them are in the Bawumia sort of, call it camp, right? And they likely would become members of the cabinet or the government should they win the December 2024, election. So in a sense, it's putting the Akufo-Addo and his government on one side and giving some sort of room potentially for these new candidates who would be members in the cabinet to come. Again, should they win the election? And the election is going to be highly competitive.
A quick one on this. Chairman Sabonsu is said to be very instrumental and significant in the Bawumia camp, correct?
To an extent, yes.
Right. Now, he, as Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, set up a Constitution Review Committee. Yep. That committee's recommendation is that we should cap our ministers to 25. Maximum 25. Political, intellectuals like Dr. Asa Asante say that we can do with 19 ministers. Alan Shramanting says he will do with 40 ministers. Bawumia says I'll do with 50. Then Mahama says I'll do with 60. From where you sit, at the time where there was a clarion call for the reshuffle, the major plank was for a downsizing, as you were championing.
Absolutely.
Do you think at this point, from what has happened, that the president is listening at all?
I don't think so, and it's not even just the reshuffle. You can go back, to some of the major policy decisions that have been made, and calls for some things to be scrapped. That it had to take extra effort, right? So, for example, this 15% VAT on electricity, it had to take extra effort to the point of labor unions and other groups threatening to go on the street before, right, the government of the day does, the listening. And you can cite numerous other examples related to that. Governance is not easy, but at the end of the day, you want to make life bearable for the citizens. And to that extent, you want to show that you are with the people and working for the people. And if you look at, some of the issues that have taken place last several months and years, it doesn't indicate to me that the government necessarily has been carrying the people along, on this journey. So when Haruna then makes the point or uses the football analogy to say, well, you can make substitutions very late in the game and people will come and have an impact, on the game and even win new games. It doesn't work like that when it comes to governance and even running an economy. It takes a while for reforms to begin to filter through.
You are strong on the economy side. Very briefly, so I go to Akufo-Addo. You are strong on the economy side. The 2024 targets have already been set in the budget, correct? As you may have already, pointed to. So, is there anything different these appointees are coming in to do that we should be so, alarmed and talk about the fact that this is too little, too late? As it may be said that they may come in with some initiative and some, creative skills to implement the budget.
No, the budget is already in motion. I've said that. So you don't expect them to come and change things, right, overnight. There may be one or two small quick wins. Like, for example, if we're able to push through and conclude on this external commercial debt restructuring, because that's the major overhang the next few months that we've got to deal with. But if you also look at it politically in terms of a new crop of people potentially coming in that could form, part of the government should they win an election, then in a sense, it does indicate, some sort of opportunity to learn or training ground. Because in any ways, or in any case, we've said that from July, August, many of them will be back on the campaign trail. And if you want to meet them, you have to go to the villages, towns, and constituencies.
All right.